To welcome everybody to the October 2020 meeting of the Wild Ones Middle Tennessee chapter. My name is Richard Hitt, and I'm the president of the chapter. I'd like to introduce our speaker tonight. This is Leslie Anne Rawlings. She has a degree in environmental interpretation from the Ohio State University. She has worked in a variety of museums, zoos, local, state, and national parks as a tour guide, naturalist, and park ranger. Since 2004, she has worked for the Tennessee State Park System, first at Radnor Lake and now at Long Hunter, where she developed a wildflower sequence of classes for a wildflower course for adults. I think I was in the first series of classes. I may be wrong about that, but I learned an awful lot from Leslie Anne several years ago, and I'm looking forward to hearing her condense all of that down into 1 hour with extra stuff included as well. So, Leslie Anne, you're on.
We're on.
See the screen share now.
Everybody good?
Yes.
Okay. All right, sounds good. So, one of the things I see a lot on Facebook is pictures of flowers. People have said, ID, please. And I look at these flowers and I go, oh, gracious. If people don't only learn how to take better pictures and learn how to take better notes, and back in the day, you know, I used to just take notes of it. We get so excited seeing a new flower and everything. I think we tend to hone in on the flower itself and we forget everything else about the plant. So you see a lot of pictures like this that folks will put on the different website or the different Facebook pages, and they're ID please, ID please. I found this at Long Hunter. I found this at so-and-so. This is in my backyard. And they'll try real hard to tell you all the necessary information and everything, but it just doesn't work. So I'm here to try to help you figure out how to take better pictures and take better notes when you come across those plants that you are seeing for the first time in your life. So we really need to get back to the beginning and think about back when we were in, I guess, probably 5th or 6th grade, you probably saw something like this where you learned the basic structures of flowers and the things that make up a perfect flower. So on this side of the screen, you can see we've got the unit series, what each unit, what each single thing is called. Then we've got the collective words for what the parts of the flower are. So when you first think of your single flower and you've picked this flower and you're heading up this stem here, sometimes you'll hit this little wide section and you run into these green things right here, where the flower, that's what was left of the flower when it opens up. The bud at one time was covered by these little green leaflets called a sepal, or the collective is called the calyx. So each family of flowers, each individual flowers has different numbers of sepals that they have, or a calyx that they have. The whole purpose of those sepals were to protect the bud, protect the young flower parts before it unfolded. So one is referred to as a sepal. You can say sepals, plural, but the scientific way to explain that, a whole collection of them, is called a calyx. Or where the sepals and the petals are kind of the same color and it's really hard to tell them apart, that is called the perianth, where the sepals actually mimic some petals. Okay. So think of this flower structure as a sandwich. So you're going up your stem. That first layer that you run into on the flowers are the sepals. Okay, the next spiral that you're going to run into are the petals. And the petals, of course, are all different shapes and sizes and colors and whatnot. The collective, instead of just saying petals, is called the corolla. So Toyota did not come up with anything unique. Those that are driving the Toyotas are actually driving a bunch of petals around. So bottom layer of your flower sandwich is sepals. The next layer is your petals. And then you get into the male portion of the flowers. Those are called stamens. The collective over here you can see is androecium. The stamens are made up of an anther, which is the pollen bearing area right up here, and the filament. So the filament's main purpose is to support that anther get it way on up out of the flower, away from the petals and away from everything else, and make it nice and pretty and available to the animals that are trying to get to that. Okay, so filament support, anther is what has the pollen grains, and that's what's making me sound a little wheezy right now, breathing in all that pollen from the allergies. The last one is the female portion of the flower, and some people prefer to call that a carpel or a pistil. I much prefer carpel because I carry a pistol on my side at work, so I try not to confuse the two. The collective term of a whole bunch of carpels is called the gynecium. So your carpel consists of an ovary. Inside the ovary is where the seeds are at. What the young, unborn, unripe seeds are in there, called ovules. So ovary, style is kind of the, if you think of this like a flower vase, so that's the neck of the flower vase, the style. And it's kind of the same purpose as a filament. It's getting that stigma up and above the rest of the flower parts. The stigma is sticky and it's the tip of the female portion, and that's going to be the portion that receives the pollen. So it needs to be up there and available and out of everybody else's way. So once again, you got stigma, style, ovary, ovules for the female portion of the flower, which is called the gynecium. This whole single thing is called a pistil or a carpel. Okay, so again, it's just like a sandwich. You go up that stem, you run into the sepals first, it folded back after the flower opened. Then the next layer is going to be your petals. The next spiral is going to be the anthers, and then the next thing right there, the queen on top, is going to be the female portion of the flower. So again, that's just a quick little overview of the basic structures that make up the flowers. Now those flowers are arranged different ways. So you don't usually just see one little single flower. Like you see over here, it's called inflorescences, the way the flowers are arranged on their branch. So you can see over here, there is a solitary flower, and there's a few species that it is just one little single flower at the top of a stem, like violets. A lot of violets are solitary flowers, or some of the glade cress that we have here around the Middle Tennessee area. Those are solitary flowers. Let's see, I'm having trouble seeing my, if I can reduce that. There we go. Over here is just kind of a basic scheme. So we just looked at a basic flower drawing. So this is a basic scheme for inflorescences. And so each flower in the inflorescent is going to be on its own little stalk. That's called a pedicel. Right here at the bottom, there's going to be a little leaf. So that little leaf signifies this is one flower, this is one whole flower, this is one whole flower, this is one whole little flower part, this is one whole little flower part right here. So that's called a bract, B-R-A-C-T, bract. It's just a little reduced leaf that is often in a lot of these inflorescences. Now these leaves down here, okay, kind of mark the beginning of the inflorescence. So from the stem here to the stem to the top, that main stem of the inflorescence is called the rachis, R-A-C-H-I-S. So you've got that, and it's marked by this little pair of leaves that's usually there kind of at the top or bottom of the inflorescence, however you look at it. And then this would be the main portion of the stem of the plant down here. Okay, so the peduncle, I guess, is the stalk that is from here all the way down. Any flower book you pick up is going to have a picture of inflorescences, so you don't have to clog your brain with what some of these inflorescent terms are. But the important thing is when you take your picture of your newfound flower is try to get a long shot so you can see the entire inflorescence. It's not good to focus in like we saw there at the beginning. It's not good to just focus in on one of the little tiny flowers and everything, because they could be arranged any different way. You can see over here again, solitary. Here's a spike where they don't have any extra little stems at all. They are just right against that main stem. You've got a raceme, which is similar to the bigger picture over here. In fact, I think it's an exact copy of it there, but they've got the stems in each one. The cymes have kind of a three-tiered arrangement of the plant, a corymb, is kind of a flat-topped arrangement. You can kind of see how they're long and the stems get shorter, but the appearance of the whole flower stalk is kind of a flat-topped appearance. And then a panicle is just a nice spread out flower. There's many, many, many branches to it. An umbel is sort of like an umbrella. So you've got the main spike here, and then you have several little branches. Each little flower is off on its own branch. And then there's even something called a double umbel, which each little branch would then have another umbrella off at the end of it. So pay attention, not only to the individual flower that's new to you, but how they are arranged on the plant, and either note it in your notebook, what kind of, if you've got your flower book with you, or just kind of note or draw or get a good shot, get a good medium shot to show on your phone camera how well spread out the flowers are arranged. So any of those groupings of the way the flowers are presented on the plant is called an inflorescent. And like I said, any book, any wildflower field guide that you pick up is going to have something similar that's on the left-hand side of the screen here, explaining the different botany terms that they are. Okay, so it's important to get a good look at the little flower that you found that's new. It's important to figure out how they're spaced out on the plant. The next thing let's look at is leaves. And we'll kind of do a basic theme of the leaves here and go over the different parts. Of course, you have the blade here, which is the flat green part of the leaf. The petiole is the stem portion of the leaf. Stipules are really neat. They are little tiny, right here on this drawing, they're right here on the side, right at the base of the petiole. They're just little, I call them mini-me leaves. They're little mini-me leaves, and several wildflowers and families of wildflowers will have these stipules, and that helps a lot of times when you're trying to distinguish maybe one family from the other, especially like between the rose and the buttercup family. Buttercups do not have these stipules on their leaves, but roses sure do. Otherwise, they look very similar, but that is always out in the field, a quick judgment call when you go down to the base of the petiole of where it meets the main stem here, and look for those stipules. Now, sometimes stipules can be kind of hair-like or thin or grass-like. They may not be an exact mini-me copy of this bigger leaf, but they are there. Sometimes they kind of run up a little bit along the main stem or something too. So that's stipules. The axillary bud is this is more something that has second year growth. It's not usually an herbaceous annual wildflower. So something like a shrub or a tree is going to have an axillary bud right here where the petiole and the main stem meets, and that's next year's leaf bud. Okay, sometimes the petioles are wrapped around it and protecting it. If something would happen to this big leaf, maybe a caterpillar eats it all, or it wilts, or something crazy goes on, then the tree may relief and send out another leaf. Okay, now the other things are the portions of the leaf. You've got the margin is the outside edge. Up here at the top, the very tip is called the apex, and then you've got the base of the leaf. And just like we were talking about with the inflorescences, any of those wildflower books or tree books are going to have all the fancy names. If you really feel like filling your file cabinet brain like I do, if you really want to toss something in the file cabinet and learn all those fancy schmancy names, have at it. But I don't bother with it because I know that I can pick up any one of my books on my bookshelf, or any more, probably go somewhere on the internet and find all the crazy terms that they have for describing something pointed like this leaf, or if it's rounded at the top, or if it's heart-shaped at the bottom, that would be cordate. You know, if you had a nice little heart-shaped bottom here to the leaf. If you have wavy margins, that's called dentate. So I can keep going on and going on and going on with all those names of leaves. But again, any of your wildflower books or tree books are going to have all that information for you. So that's the basic theme of the leaf. And now that we've had a chance to kind of see the pieces and parts that make up a leaf, let's talk about some of the complexity. And again, so the flowers are called inflorescences, the way they're arranged. but leaves have what's just basically leaf complexity. So you've got the simple leaf that we were just looking at right up here. Okay. Compound leaves have the main part of the leaf divided into leaflets. So how do you know if you've got, like we'll use this one here, for example, how do you know that you've got a compound leaf and you're not looking at a branch that has opposite leaves? Remember that axillary bud? That's what you're going to look for, especially on the trees. That little axillary bud is going to be down there, and everything above that axillary bud, you know, is one single leaf. So like on this drawing, the little bud is down there, and we know this is a twice pinnate leaf. Okay, so you've got simple leaves. These are called trifoliate leaves. Here's something like poison ivy, some of the box elder leaves, some of the tick trefoils would have leaves like this that are 3. This is something like a hickory leaf here with maybe the main leaflet a little bit bigger than the ones at the side. That's important. So that's called pinnate, I have birds at home. So the bird feather, if you think of this main stem being like the center shaft of a bird feather, and then everything coming off the sides of it here. This is palmate. Richard told you I'm from Ohio originally, so this is like my buckeye leaf. So all the leaflets are going to attach like the palm of your hand, like the digits on in your palm, each come off from one central spot and make that palmate. And then again, you've got the twice pinnate leaf. So you've got the main shaft of the feather, and you've got your leaflets coming off like this one up here. But then each of those leaflets are also subdivided. So it's really important, it's like, as I keep repeating, get excited about the new flower, get a picture of it, get a picture of the leaves, especially how they're attached. I think that's my next slide here. Yeah, look and see if they are alternate, which is where the leaves are attached, that's called a node, and then it's an internode between the leaves. So alternate leaves are like our one leg and one arm. If your body was the center staff there, they're just alternate. They zigzag up and down the whole stem of each other. So that's alternate. Opposite, of course, is opposite. So like both of your hands or arms and both of your legs. Whorled, W-H-O-R-L-E-D, whorled means several, at least 3 or more at each node. So you can have a whole little spindle of leaves in one spot coming off along that main stem. And then basal, many wildflowers have basal leaves. And in some families, the basal leaves are much different than what's up here on the stem. So I tell everybody it is really important. Again, we get so focused and so excited about the flower that we forget about everything else. But the mustard family is really different when you look at the basal leaves as opposed to what's up here on the stem. So they have like basal leaves, and then they might have like an alternate leaf up there on the stem for something in the mustard family. So the little swirl at the bottom, you know, they're swirled up here on the stem, that's called a whorl. If they're swirled on the bottom, that's called a rosette. So a basal rosette is what you gotta just follow that plant all the way down. Once you've looked at the flowers, you've looked at the leaves to see if they're opposite, alternate, or whorled. Don't forget to go all the way down where the plant is coming out of the ground, because sometimes they've got basal leaves that are all dried up and shrivel, and that's really important to figure out when you go back to your field guide. Again, like the mustard family, they just look totally opposite of what's on the main stem of the plant. So if you're going by what's based on, or going by basing yourself what's going on the main part of the stem, you may be totally lost. So take a look at some of these really special leaves that are in the wildflowers especially. So we mentioned earlier sessile. Okay, a sessile leaf just means there's no little extra stem poking it out past the main stem and expanding it any. Clasping is kind of like A lot of asters have that now. So you will have the main stem, and then there's just, it's like little earlobes or little lobes of the leaf that just protrude around the stem with just a tiny bit. So they're not quite opposite leaves, but they are, they're going around or hanging over the side of the stem. And a lot of those clasping leaves are sessile. They don't have a stem sticking them out away from the plant. They're sessile leaves, and then they just kind of grow around the portions of the stem. So kind of like this portfoliate one that we're looking at up here at the top. This is a bellwort. So portfoliate, you'll see the stem pierces the leaf. So like this bottom leaf here on the bellwort, you can see where it looks like the stem just goes straight through the leaf. So if you imagine that there was no solidness over here on this other side, and that the sides of the leaf just extended past the stem, then that is your clasping leaf. This connate portfoliate is one of these honeysuckles here. So again, it's like both of the leaves grew together. So here you can see it totally penetrating what looks to be one big old round circular leaf before this inflorescence. But this is the main stem, or I'm sorry, this is the main vein of the leaf here. And then this is where they grew together. And then you can see the leaf stem poking through. So that connate is a word that means everything's joined. So they talk about, if you end up taking my my more advanced class, we'll talk about what the word connate means. But for now, just know that it means things have grown together, or things are joined either through webbing or joined somehow. Okay, and then peltate is like our mayapple down here. That is like, imagine an umbrella, and the leaf is attached right to the bottom center of the leaf. So when these mayapples are emerging, they're kind of curled up, and they kind of start poking out a little bit, and everything's all folded up. And so then as they unwind themselves and stretch out, then they look more like an umbrella. But a peltate leaf is definitely like a little umbrella. So those are just some kind of, and most of your field guides are going to have these kind of explanations in them too, but those are just some of the weird, if you think of it that way, kind of strange ways that leaves can be attached, especially on some of these annual wildflowers. So, excuse me, back to my main point. This is what I see a lot of. ID, please, Long Hunter State Park, October 3rd. So you look at these two flowers, and they are different flowers, I promise, and they both were blooming October 3rd here in Long Hunter State Park at the Cedar Glade. So when you take a picture like this, again, forget about your fancy macro lenses and all that stuff, unless you're taking some artsy pictures. And you'll, of course, want a picture like this looking straight down, but don't send these kind of pictures on Facebook and expecting somebody to ID it for you, because especially these yellow composites, as you can see, look too much alike, and they're super difficult, even for the experts, to take a look. And at this point, I would look at something like this and say, well, I could hedge a guess, but I wish they would have told me more information. So everybody's got cameras in their phones now, which is something I didn't grow up having, so I ended up taking a lot of notes in my little notebook and everything. But it's so nice now to have these cameras that we can actually take pictures, and then we can go back home and zoom and look around on them. So get the side view. Again, especially important for these composites where they look really similar from the top view. Now, maybe some people are out there perking up a little bit and going, oh, I know what this is. Because if you look over here at the sepals on this one, this would be recurved sepals on this one. And it's very globular-like and very spiny-like on the sepals on this inflorescent. So these filaries. These here on this plant are oppressed. So they're pressed tight against, they're not curling out or anything. And we also in this side view get a good look at at least a portion of some of the leaves. So you can kind of start seeing that the leaves are different on these things. They kind of look like little spines or hairs poking out on this one on the right. And then you can see these nice simple leaves with a good dark mid vein. And it looks like little hairs, again, sticking off on that one over here. So again, when you're taking your pictures, it's great to fall in love and see a new one that you hadn't seen for the first time. So take your good close-up picture, then get something from the side. Then you want to step back and get a medium shot. Now, if you look at these two shots, who cares? The flowers look awful in them, but that's not what I'm going for. I didn't care. And your little cameras will probably do the same thing, but a medium shot, you're wanting to show the flower placement and the leaf placement. So you're trying to get a picture of the inflorescence, and you're trying to get a picture of how the leaves are arranged. Are they opposite, alternate, whorled, or basal? And so you can get a pretty good idea that this one on the right looks like it's got a terminal raceme of some sort, but you can also see that they're growing axillary out of the leaves where they join. And then this one over here, you can see it's more terminal. Lots of leaf structure on the left, and then you've got this terminal flower. Again, I don't care that I've ruined, overshot the exposure on this, because I already got my close-up picture there at the beginning from the side view and from the close-up view. Okay, so now some of you are probably starting to go, okay, now I'm starting to figure out what it is. But you want one more shot, okay? If you take a long shot, step back, who cares if you get the pavement? As in this one here on the left, there's a little bit of pavement there as the edge of the parking lot. Again, my flowers are washing out, but that doesn't matter. You're getting more, the entire plant, to kind of see if you need to later on zoom down and look at where the basal leaves are at, but you're getting, again, a better shot of that inflorescence and the plant as an entire whole, and you're looking in the background and seeing what's around it. So you can tell this is kind of a grassy area where this one is at. You step back here at this one, and again, it really shows, you can tell that the picture, that I still had one flower blooming, but most of these things have started to give up their blooms and start to, they're still green seeds. So they're still in that area of maturing, but you can see how rocky it is, and it's not as grassy as this picture is over here on the left. So come to the end here, and that is golden aster that was on the left-hand side of your screen all the way down, and gumweed, which is one of the more popular ones growing in the cedar glades this time of the year. So back to kind of, again, some medium shots that are showing a flower, showing a portion of the leaves, showing some of the, what some of the plants look like underneath. So again, just keep in mind when you see those flowers for the first time, believe me, it's so easy I know, because I get overwhelmed too. I actually get down, sometimes take selfies with them and do all kinds of crazy nutty things. But when you're trying to ID, you'll do yourself a favor when you take as many pictures from as many different angles as you possibly can. And if you just remember your basic structures of the flowers, remember the petals and the sepals and the stamens and the carpels are the basic portions of the plant. So that's where your micro stuff wants to come in handy. If you want to get, if you kind of notice something with your tin loops that's really, really crazy, and you don't know quite how to describe it in your notebook, then turn on that macro and get a really deep shot inside the center of the flower. If you go back to use your key or your field guide, sometimes those things are important. Again, getting a side view when you're looking especially at the aster family, some of the things in the snapdragon family, violets and the snapdragons and stuff have different things to key out in the throat of the flower. So you've got a tubular flower, and looking down into the interior of that bell-shaped or that tube-shaped flower a lot of times there's some things that the field guides note. And if you took a lousy picture or you forgot to take very good notes, sometimes those key things are evident to be able to tell one species apart from the other. Again, looking at the flower placement, making sure you note what kind of inflorescent it is. Even if you just do a quick sketch and use circles, in place of the flower, just draw that in your notebook, or again, back off and take a really good medium shot or long shot to show the inflorescent type that you've got. And then also make sure you're paying attention to how the leaves are attached, and don't forget those leaves at the very, very, very bottom of the plant. Sometimes those are super, super important. So that's all I really had to present tonight. Just kind of a quick little introduction. As Richard mentioned, he took my flower class there when the first time I offered it 3 years ago. I'm planning on offering it again this year in January. And January and February, we will have a prerequisite class, and that will expand on what we've talked a little bit about tonight. We talk about all the different pieces and parts of flowers and leaves, and go down the different types of inflorescences, and we even cover the fruits and the seeds and all that stuff to get all that terminology back in your head again and ready to think about flowers. And then what I do is start teaching the characteristics of a few of the more common families that are found here in Tennessee. So there are 6 classes altogether, a 101 through 106, with 101 being the mandatory prerequisite to be able to take 102 through 106. So if you're interested in that, just shoot me an email. The email's here on the screen, and or give me a call, and I will put you on a list to send you my flyer. I will probably send my flyer to Richard so he can post it on the Wild Ones website. And so we'll give everybody a good notice. I'll probably start working on that mid-December there sometime, getting the word out about my classes. This year, due to COVID, I'm going to have to kind of make them a little bit smaller. I'm used to having about 20 people crammed in here in my nice little room, but we'll have to probably limit it to about 10 folks at a time this year. And I'll probably offer about 5 classes, because last year's folks got a little bit short cut, or what am I trying to say, got shorted. And so I'll have to try to accommodate them and the folks from the years past too. We finally got the whole series together. I'm going to stop sharing so you can see me again. There we go.
Thank you very much, Leslie Anne. That was great.
Good deal.
Okay, it looks like I'm unmuted. Yeah, when I took the class, we had the 101, and then after 101, you can take any class you want in whatever order you want.
Right.
So that was very convenient. You didn't have to take everything sequentially. But from your class handouts, I still refer back to those to, because this is a lot of stuff to remember, of course. And
Yeah.
with the handouts or the front of your flower ID book or whatever, it really helps to refresh your memory periodically, especially on all the carpel configurations. But
yes.
I'm still staring at my my vegetables and trying to just figure out exactly what was going on in those the bell peppers or whatever, and look at the carpels and all the structure in there. Anyway, that was a great class. I appreciate your offering that, and I must say your PowerPoint skills have really increased.
Oh, good. Well, that's good. And to tell you, I have thought when I was cutting up my own bell peppers this year, I thought, you know what, the way I need to teach that portion of the class is just bring a whole bunch of fruit in, bring some strawberries, some pineapples, and we'll just make a big salad as we lecture along, and we'll have something to munch on then by the end of the class.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
As I eat fruit, I'm thinking, is this a palm? Or
Yeah.
So anyway, if you have a question, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask it, or you can jot it down in the chat, and I can read it off. One of the comments was you were talking about the rachis. That's also a term used for feathers, and also in a compound leaf like a hickory leaf, the center part is called a rachis.
Okay, that I was not familiar with.
So it's actually a very general term meaning the center rib of some structure.
Okay. Very good. Well, it looks like we've got some things in the chat, but I hate putting my glasses on because you guys will see a reflection.
Well, let's see. Alicia, first, there were the rachis questions. I never noted whether to say rachis or rachis, but
I guess I go hard with a K on myself.
okay.
I guess, yeah, I haven't heard enough people. If any of you that have taken my class, don't expect to learn Latin from me. Richard will tell you. I'm just, I try my best, and I fail every time.
So we will have a recording. It should have turned out okay, of Leslie Ann's presentation. That'll be on our YouTube channel probably around the end of the week. Alicia was asking if it's possible to get a copy of the slides, but certainly you could watch the recording and relive it.
Yep.
So I was just thinking you might not want to share the slides because that's part of what you teach and use to teach in your class.
Yeah. And most of those things you can find in your wildflower guides and that kind of stuff too. I use a book called Newcomb's Flower Guide, and I use the Tennessee and Ohio Valley Wildflower Guide, of course, Peterson's, and then I have the vascular, I believe it's called the Vascular Plants of Tennessee, but I would be glad to send anybody a copy of that bibliography from the class and everything, so you can kind of get familiar with some of the books. I'm now carrying some of the books in the gift shop. So we have that Tennessee Valley, or Tennessee and Ohio Valley Wildflowers one that has the St. John worts on the front of it. And I've also found a really neat book that is called Botany in a Day. And my clerk here at the park decided, hey, we should sell that in the gift shop. And I said, well, I absolutely love it. And everybody's been asking me where I got it. So yes, if we carry it. And then the first class I had after we'd had it in the gift shop, I think I sold 5 out of 6 people. So
yeah, that's a great book. You really learn the difference.
Yeah.
You really learn the differences in the families much better than most other books.
Yes, and I look at that, and that's actually almost the way I'm teaching my class, because he does the same thing. He where he uses patterns, I call it a combination lock. So he talks about the patterns, and then he what am I trying to say? He has a good description of the family characteristics, and then he has some of the popular genuses within the family, and then he has some medicinal things. So that's exactly what I do in the 102 through 106 programs. And Richard's right, I always tell everybody, take 102, and then after that, it really doesn't matter which order you take it in, but you don't want to take the 104 or probably 105 first, because those are a little bit more complex families. And until you get kind of used to hearing the lingo and the way I teach, it's probably best to wait a little bit on those two.
We should give in full truthfulness, don't expect to learn all of botany in a day if you buy the book Botany in a Day. I have no idea where that title came from.
Oh, I know. He needs to totally change it. Yeah.
I bet the publisher forced him to use that title.
Yeah, probably so. And everything.
I think it had to do with botany every day. You learn a little bit of botany every day.
There we go.
Botany in a day.
That's really stretching it, Sue.
I might buy that, but yeah, I joke about that, and I say, look, it's taken me 6 classes to teach y'all something, so don't feel bad. But it is a nice backup, and I just got it back in May, and have not even begun to delve into how it can enhance my classes. But I know some of those people that I've seen that have it bring it to my class, and I'll go look up in Mr. Eppel's book and tell me what he says about this one. So we have fun with it.
Laura, would you like to read your comment to Leslie Anne? You're muted, I think.
Yeah, she's muted.
I think she's figured it out.
There she is.
Now, can you make the same profound comment?
You wish you could mute me. No, I like how you sandwich the terminology there for the flower parts. All right, talking about the different spirals. spiral sepal, the sepal spiral, and then the petals, and then it kind of took all the floating terms and organized them nicely. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, that's how my botany professor taught us and everything. This is basically, when you take the 101 class, it is a revamp of my college botany from way back in 1987. And yeah, so he taught us that way. It is the same thing. It's funny how just some little simple thing like that will just open your eyes and make sense, because I was taught by my grandmother. I had a grandmother in West Virginia that every time she came over, and I don't know at what point she started, but at some point she started with me, setting me down with her Peterson field guide and saying, look at the new flowers I found. Then it got to be where she would come over to visit for Thanksgiving or whatever, and she would barely be out of the car, and I'd be running up going, Grandma, get your flower book out. So all that, I mean, so I knew ID and learned ID stuff pretty good just from flipping through the books, which is what most of us kind of do, you know, when we find stuff that's new. But when I took that botany class at Ohio State, the introductory botany class, and had this wonderful teacher, Dr. Stussy, he was just amazing, and some of his grad students and several other botany instructors there. But I took that first one, and I decided I'm going to take a whole lot more botany classes at this college, because I had, luckily with my interpretation degree, I could take natural history stuff to be a naturalist, or I could take the history stuff to be a living history interpreter and work in museums and like Sam Davis Home or whatever, and dress in costume. So I loved everything and split it right down the middle, but botany really took my heart, and so did geology, and so did geography. Actually, if I had a professor that I loved, I just went wholehearted at it and took as many classes as I could from them.
Yeah. Satisfy the hunger.
Yes.
But using the word spiral just really brought it to life. You know, it takes it from a 2D picture it brings it to life, because we see them in spirals. So thank you.
Yeah, sure thing.
Do you have other comments or questions? So what family do you find to be the most? Okay. What family, Leslie Anne? Let Alice go ahead. Go ahead, Alice.
Go ahead, Alice.
I like when I find something to go into the nitty gritty and find. You should try that with a dandelion. The dandelion seems to be the most interesting plant in the world in some way, and you can find it all over the world in some way, and you go into the German flora with something, and you see it occurs here in America, and it also occurs in Europe, and have on the dandelion, for example, I have the books of my father's, and in German explanation in those books, I'll show them sometime on the screen here. One sentence about is explaining, has so many superlatives, and then it gets into the nitty gritty. Are the hairs on the leaves standing up or lying down, and all of that. And you can do that with plants and with fungi and everything else. So I go oftentimes, for example, here on Horse Mountain, I got the wild Chipolaria orchid, and that is, I got six resources on where it is mentioned, and you get something out of each resource.
Yes.
So we can take a plant apart or kind of put it together, and even this little moss that I showed you, that's kind of neat. Or anybody know the lopseed plant? And it's a little thing, and it is truly the lopseed. It's hanging down, and or you take other plants like the trees. And I'm also into the cherry tree. Since that big cherry tree came down, landing a little bit on my house, but it was huge. And so always study into the depths of anything and everything. And anybody know the Kentucky coffee tree?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And the Kentucky coffee tree, Gymnocladus dioicus, is having double pinnate leaves.
Right.
One leaflets. So one leaf is just as far as your arms can stretch out.
Yeah.
So we are having sunshine, and when the sun is coming down, it is turning like you turn. See my hand? So it's turning its leaflets, so the sun will hit it about where my thumb is, and this way they don't burn up in the summer. So watch those leaflets turn. So there are little details about every flower.
So you were talking about dandelions, Alice. My understanding is if you look at a field of dandelions, that essentially all the dandelions in that field are genetically identical. But when you go to a different field far away, you might have another genotype. So I've always wondered about how they reproduce and do that, but I've never found a good answer.
Well, I can't give you an answer to that one right now, but you just go to Alaska and the dandelions are big and the rhubarb is big and all of that. Or you can make, some people talk about dandelion wine. Well, my relatives in Denmark, they harvest the blossoms, put them in a basket and make a syrup of it you can put on the bread.
Yeah, the whole plant is edible.
Yeah.
Yes, the whole plant is edible and very, very edible. And when in the wartime, when you got to find something green to eat, then you have the dandelion leaves, you hope.
Well, thank you, Alice.
Yes, I said enough for today.
Other questions or comments? So Leslie Anne, I typically promote your class through the Wild Ones. So as soon as I get my email, we'll put it on our webpage and our website. We'll put it on our website and our Facebook page.
Okay, I appreciate that.
I'm still getting used to all this social sharing stuff. Okay.
Me too.
Yeah. So I started studying plants not many years ago, maybe 2012, 2013. And I had in my mind, I would spend a little bit of time studying plants and then move on to the other Tennessee Naturalist Program classes like insects or water ecology. And I'm still stuck on plants. It was a lot more there than I thought. So and the more I learn, it seems like the less percentage-wise I actually know about plants, because it seems like there's so much more out there. So I'm not sure I'm making progress. But I certainly
give up. You just a little baby steps and a little bit at a time.
Yeah, I certainly took a leap forward though when I took your 6 classes, so that was very helpful.
Oh, good. I'm glad I could help. That's the reason I wanted to do them, because part of it was my grandmother shared so much with me, and I just wanted to show people how simple it is. You just got to rethink how to do it. And Miss Alice, I've got so many books at home, and that's the first thing I do is I find something new, and I will go through when I take my class, I tell them how, I go through this book, then I go through that book, then I go through this and that, and on and on and on and on until I have gone through my whole library, looking up my new plant and learning as much as I can about it.
That's great.
How about 30 volumes of one floor and
Awesome.
1860 something.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That is.
So that's the Philly fern, the most primitive fern that where the whole fern front has the thickness of one cell. Trichomanis.
Okay.
And that grows in it comes in a moment, where we have a bridge, where we have a natural bridge. Well, I'm supposed to spit it out now, but it doesn't talk. But that
Like Stone Door, down around Stone Door.
is something similar in that area. And anyway, I got so excited when I found that, and it was in the German book. And one plant has to be first, and that's the first plant in it of 30 volumes, where the index is one book all on its own.
Yep.
But anyway, it's exciting, and it says in that book from the 1800 something, it says also in North America on a number of plants.
Wow.
Many plants. So and the thing. So someday I could show you a book on the screen here of that volume.
That sounds really neat.
So think about the size of orchid seeds. If you have any questions, ask me someday. Seeds of orchid plants. Now, they're not necessarily found here, but a number of orchid plants are naturally found here. Seeds of orchid plants. You won't see ready.
Roger McCoy is going to be our next speaker, and he's going to speak on the efforts to save the white fringeless orchid, which occurs sort of northeast of Chattanooga mainly. Now, he told me the other day that this is fire season, and you can't predict when the weather conditions are perfect for a fire. And so if the weather conditions in November are perfect for a fire on that Monday, he may not be able to make it. So I told him I would stand in for him, and we would do something, but we would perfectly understand, because we want him to be taking care of our prairies and savannas and burning them as appropriate. So he had that one little caveat, but he said the chances are not high that will happen.
Okay.
Anybody else have a comment? Well, let us thank you again, Leslie Anne. That was really great, and appreciate your going through that. It is nice how you present it. You've honed your presentation a lot, and it's very well organized, and it's nice to see that level of organization, because when most people pick up a plant book, it just sorry, I got to do something there. Okay. When most people pick up a plant book, it's just kind of overwhelming with all the terminology. It's just, just get bombarded with all this stuff. And like you suggest, you don't want to learn all that at once, because you can't. You pick it up as you need it to identify another plant that they're working on perhaps. And that way it gets better reinforced. So I've had much more luck in the field, just staring at a plant, going through my book, learning the terms that apply to that plant, and then repeat, a couple of thousand times, and you'll start to.
Eventually it sticks.
Right. Yep.
But as she was mentioning about cordate means heart-shaped, so just go into your Latin or Greek terminology, and it's all fits together like a puzzle.
Yes.
Right.
Make a puzzle out of it. Go ahead.
Yeah. A lot of the Latin names, if you pick them apart, you can figure out what they're describing, like the perfoliatum, Silphium perfoliatum, the cup plant. So I was thinking about giving a talk one day about the Latin names and what they really mean, at least the ones that I understand, but that would not be interesting for an entire hour. So I was going to do like maybe part of a talk on that and move on to something equally uninteresting, but still short.
On the pronunciation of the scientific names, well, I kind of have it down pat, I claim, and where to pronounce things on the syllables, and with my German accent, you might not understand it, but it fits. I'm trying to be as correct as possible.
Yeah, the Missouri Botanical Garden, for each of the plants that they have, you can click the loudspeaker button and a gentleman will read the Latin name for you. So that's where I
Oh.
learned how to do it. I learned that at least the way he pronounces it, it's all the A's, almost all the A's are long A's. So instead of Virginiana, it's Virginiana. And so it's really, really big on the long A's, at least for him. I don't know if that's universally true, but it seems to match what I hear from the botanists around Nashville.
And I had a student tell me just this year that it is like I took Spanish in high school, and you had male words and female words.
Oh, yeah.
And so Latin is also, and so that's why some of those things are like Acer rubrum, because Ace, they go by the genus is male. So rubrum would be male, but something that is rubra, or BRA at the end of it, is a female genus. But it all the species names will align with what if the genus is male or a female. And I was like, oh, that was one of those light bulbs that went off, and talk
Right.
about, oh my gosh, all these years I never figured that out. I should have, but but I always wondered
Yeah.
why people were different spellings, and I just thought, well, what is up with that?
Yeah, the three endings are typically US, A, and UM. So
Yeah.
my Latin teacher would say bonus, bonus means good, but depends on what it's modifying as to what ending it gets. So yeah, it's one of those languages with, it's highly gendered in the endings on the words. And if you're modifying a noun, the ending you use on the adjective has to go with the gender of the noun.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad
Okay.
I'm glad he told me that, and glad I now know that. I don't know what I'll do with it, but
Yeah. So there were two useful classes I had in high school. The most important class I had was typing, but the second most important class I had was Latin. And everything else was sort of, the math was there, the physics and all that stuff. But I used the typing class more in my adult life than any other class I had in high school. So, well, it's 8 o'clock or so. Yeah. So let's wrap it up. And if you have any more comments, you can hang around and visit, but we'll consider the meeting officially over, and I will stop the recording once I find that button. So thank you very much for coming, and you can look forward to Roger McCoy's talk, assuming he's not on call for fires and gets called in 4 weeks from tonight.
it's good. It's good to see
All right.
everybody. Thank you all.
Yes. Thanks, Leslie Anne.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Richard, Simper Ubi Sub Ubi. Did you see my comment?
No, I did not.
I'm trying to read. I have to put my glasses on and read.
Oh,
the comment.
yes. Very good.
That's my Latin.
So I'll see you, Laura, in a couple of weeks, I think, at the Swan Conservation Trust.
Yes, indeed. If
Great.
not before, who knows?
Oh, yeah.
Alrighty. Thanks. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Richard?